I want you to look down at your hands for just a second.
Just, yeah, imagine holding something right now.
Right. Imagine you are holding an object, and immediately you notice just how impossibly light it is.
Because it's mostly air inside.
Exactly. It's basically a hollow box.
Yeah.
It is made of this thin, curved wood, polished to a golden brown sheen that, I mean, it almost seems to trap the light right underneath the surface.
And there is that smell.
Oh, yeah. You can smell that faint, centuries-old scent of pine rosin and oxidized oil varnish. But here is the thing that should really make the hair on your arm stand up.
This is the crazy part.
This fragile wooden box in your hands is over 400 years old.
Over 4 centuries. It's wild.
It survived the literal blood and chaos of the French Revolution.
Barely survived, honestly.
Right. It was originally commissioned by royalty to project geopolitical power, played in these lavish, candlelit courts of Renaissance kings.
The absolute highest levels of society.
And somehow, after centuries of changing hands and changing cities and entirely changing musical tastes, it still produces a world-class resonant sound today.
It does.
You are holding history that still breathes and speaks.
I love when you put it in those sensory terms because, it really forces us to confront how miraculous their survival actually is.
Oh, totally.
We kind of condition ourselves to view these old Italian stringed instruments as static objects, like untouchable things.
Yeah, we see them behind temperature-controlled glass in a museum.
Right, or we see them in the hands of a virtuoso on a modern concert stage, wearing a tuxedo. And they just seem so pristine.
So elevated above the grid of human history.
Exactly. But they really aren't.
No, they are not. We think of them as these perfect divine artifacts that were just beamed down from the heavens.
Like they just magically appeared.
Right. But the truth we are uncovering today is so much messier. And frankly, it's so much more fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
We are taking a deep dive into the origins of the modern viola during the 16th and 17th centuries.
Specifically looking at the legendary early Cremonese and Brescian masters.
And I want to set the stage for you, the listener, really quickly. Our sources today are extracted from a meticulously detailed history of the viola by Maurice W. Riley.
And let me just say, this material is incredible.
It reads less like a dusty musical textbook and more like a high-stakes historical drama.
It really does. Because the underlying narrative that Riley presents, it completely shatters that pristine museum glass illusion we just talked about.
Right.
We are looking at a story driven by massive royal commissions used as political propaganda and insanely angry mobs destroying cultural heritage.
Literal tax problems, too.
Yes, tax evasion, basically. And a practice that we will get into later that frankly borders on architectural vandalism.
Oh, the vandalism. We are definitely getting into that because reading about how they altered these instruments to fit modern needs made me want to pull my hair out.
It is a controversial topic for sure.
But to understand why any of this matters, we have to start by looking at the musical ecosystem of the 16th century.
We have to go back to the beginning.
Right? Like, why did the viola even need to exist in the first place?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't born out of a desire for a solo instrument, was it?
Not at all. If we really want to understand the birth of the viola, we actually have to look at the human vocal tract.
Wait, really? The human voice?
Yeah.
Welcome to Viola Studio. We are a YouTube channel dedicated to the technical, pedagogical, and artistic development of viola students and instrumentalists. In every episode, our goal is to provide a concise and entertaining analysis. We will explore key themes, the messages of the great masters, and the historical context that shaped the sound of our instrument. Whether you are taking your first steps in the alto clef, or you are a professional seeking a new perspective, there is something for everyone at Viola Studio.
Don't miss our upcoming episodes, and remember,
there's always time to explore the history and the heart of classical music.
In the 16th century, the dominant musical form was polyphonic choral music.
So, church choirs.
Exactly, church choirs and court choirs. Instrumental music was largely subservient to vocal music. It wasn't the star of the show.
It was just backup.
Right. What would happen is that as choirs grew larger and the acoustic spaces like these massive stone cathedrals became more complex, choir masters needed a way to reinforce the singers.
Because bodies absorb sound and stone bounces it around.
Exactly. And the human voice, just mechanically speaking, has a relatively soft attack.
Meaning the start of the note is kind of fuzzy?
Yes, compared to a plucked or bowed string, which provides a much sharper attack, a much clearer articulation of the note.
Ah, I see.
So instrumentalists were brought in to literally double the vocal parts. They were playing the exact same notes the singers were singing.
Okay, so just to paint a picture for the listener.
Yeah.
If you were standing in a choir in the 1500s, there is just a guy standing next to you with a witter box with strings on it, playing the exact notes you were singing just to give it more punch in the boomy stone cathedral.
That is precisely what was happening. And this vocal mimicking, it dictated the design of the entire violin family.
Oh, so?
Well, the violins naturally took the high soprano parts, the highest frequencies.
Makes sense.
And the basses, the early cellos, they held down the low frequencies. But if you think about a choir, the massive, dense middle section of the harmony is carried by the alto and tenor voices.
Right, the meaty part of the chord.
Exactly. And that leaves a massive acoustic gap between the high, piercing soprano and the low, rumbling bass.
So the viola was engineered specifically to bridge that cavernous middle range.
It was. But here is the thing. Human voices aren't standardized.
Right, a tenor and an alto have very different ranges.
Which created a massive engineering problem for early luthiers.
Because one size does not fit all.
Precisely. To properly double both an alto and a tenor, you couldn't just build one single size of viola.
Because the box would be too big or too small.
Right. The acoustic resonance chamber of the instrument actually had to match the frequency of the vocal range it was doubling.
That makes total sense, physically.
So from the very beginning, luthiers were forced to construct violas in two completely different dimensions.
Okay, what were they?
A smaller model optimized for the alto range, and a massive, larger model engineered to resonate with the lower tenor range.
That sets up a fascinating identity crisis for the viola right out of the gate.
It really does.
It's not just one standardized thing, It has to be this shape-shifting tool to fill this giant gap in the middle of the choir. Which brings us to Cremona, Italy, and the man who essentially formalized this dual identity instrument, Andrea Amati.
Yes, Andrea Amati. He is the absolute pioneer here.
Operating out of Cremona.
Right. He is one of the very first luthiers to successfully engineer and produce these violas in both the small alto and large tenor dimensions.
And his genius wasn't just in the woodwork.
Right. No, it wasn't. It was in his ability to secure patronage. We know he was incredibly famous in his own time because we have the records of who was actually buying his instruments.
And we are not talking about local church bands either.
Definitely not.
I mean, in 1565, King Charles IX of France places an order for the court musicians that is just staggering to think about.
Brilliant.
38 instruments in total.
To put that in perspective for you, a master luthier, taking his time, might finish a few instruments a year.
A few a year. And this is 38.
Right. An order of 38 from a single workshop was an industrial scale commission for the Renaissance.
It's massive.
Yeah.
What exactly did he order?
The order specifically demanded 12 small pattern violins, 12 large pattern violins, 8 basses, and 6 tenors.
And the tenors were the large pattern violas.
Exactly.
I really want to look at the motivation behind this order because it seems like a bizarre flex.
Oh, it was a huge flex.
Like, King Charles IX is the monarch on paper, sure. But he is only 15 years old in 1565.
Right.
He isn't making these grand cultural decisions, is he?
No, he was a figurehead at that age. The true architect of this commission, and honestly the real power governing France at the time, was his mother.
The Queen Mother?
Yes, the regent, Catherine de' Medici.
Okay, the sources paint Catherine de' Medici as someone who deeply, deeply understood the mechanics of soft power.
Oh, she wrote the book on it.
She isn't just ordering fancy violas because she likes a good tin, right?
Okay.
She is from the incredibly powerful Medici family in Florence.
Very wealthy, very powerful.
And she is operating in a foreign court in France, dealing with deep political and religious instability.
Massive instability.
So to me, this massive Italian instrument commission feels like a deliberate geopolitical strategy.
It absolutely was.
It's like a modern superpower hosting the Olympics just to prove their dominance. She is importing Italian culture to assert her own authority, right?
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The French court at this time was completely fractured, and Catherine used culture as a weapon of unification and dominance.
A weapon of culture. I love that.
She brought her Florentine taste to Paris, styling her court, all'Italienne.
The Italian style.
Right. She built the Tuileries. She threw these incredibly sumptuous multi-day feasts and spectacles at Fontainebleau.
Just burning money to look powerful.
Exactly. These weren't just parties. They were massive theatrical displays of wealth, order, and divine right.
And music was a big part of that.
Huge. She imported Italian dancers in 1554. She imported Italian violinists in 1555.
Wow, she just brought the whole crew over.
She did. And if you have the finest Italian musicians performing at the absolute center of European political power, you cannot have them playing crude, local French instruments.
Right. It ruins the aesthetic.
Totally. Catherine would have been acutely aware of the artisanal hierarchy in northern Italy. She knew Andrea Amati was the absolute pinnacle of stringed instrument technology.
The cutting edge.
Yes, and she demanded the world's best to project her absolute power.
What Amati delivered wasn't just acoustically superior, right? It was visually branded propaganda.
Very heavily branded.
The sources describe these instruments as heavily ornamented. Like, Amati's workshop painted the royal coat of arms of France right onto the maple back of the violas.
Just massive crests.
Right. And on the ribs, which are the curved sides of the instrument, they painted the motto Pietate e Giustizia.
Compassion and justice.
Exactly. Think about the psychological impact of that for a second.
Oh, it's immense.
As the musicians played for these grand court dances, or during deeply solemn religious chapel services, the audience, the nobles, the visiting diplomats, they're constantly looking at the visual symbols of the French monarchy.
Accompanied by the literal highest quality sound money could buy.
Right. The medium was the message.
It's brilliant branding. But this brings us to the dark side of creating highly visible, politically charged masterpieces.
Yeah, this is where it gets grim.
Because you don't just build a royal collection of 38 Amati instruments, plaster them with royal coats of arms, and expect them to sit peacefully in a glass case forever.
Especially not in France.
Exactly, especially not in France. The irony here is that the very decorations that made them so valuable to Catherine de' Medici, those same crests became their death warrant.
Wow.
The Amati collection was kept relatively safely in the royal chapel at Versailles for over 2 centuries.
Okay, so they made it a long time.
They did. They survived multiple monarchs, but they could not survive the October Revolution of 1789.
The French Revolution. This is where the story shifts from a Renaissance painting into an absolute nightmare.
It really is. The historical accounts describe an intensely angry mob descending upon Versailles.
Right, and they're not in a good mood.
No. And in their fury, they weren't just going after aristocrats. They were systematically destroying the symbols of royal excess and oppression.
So when they found the instrument room...
When they found the Amati collection, they didn't see priceless musical instruments.
They didn't see art?
No, they saw the golden lilies of the French monarchy and the coats of arms painted on the wood. Those symbols made the instruments literal targets.
And they just destroyed them.
The mob smashed most of these fragile 200-year-old masterpieces to splinters.
It just makes you sick to your stomach to picture
It's a huge loss.
Just stomping on centuries of acoustic perfection because of a painted crest.
Yeah.
But the sources note that a few did survive the slaughter.
A very small handful.
And looking at the survivors tells us something incredible about how these instruments were built and the, frankly, bizarre ways later generations treated the ones that actually made it out alive.
Yes. The most crucial survivor for our understanding of early violas is currently housed at the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford University.
And this is an Amati.
Yes, it is an Andrea Amati viola made in 1574.
And this thing is an absolute giant.
It is massive.
The source material lists the exact dimensions. The body length alone, so just the wooden box, not even including the neck, is 47 centimeters.
Right.
For anyone listening, that is 18.5 inches long. To put that in perspective, grab a standard piece of printer paper. That's 11 inches.
Yeah.
Add another 2/3 of a page to that.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to tuck that massive wooden box under your chin and reach your left arm all the way out to the end of the fingerboard.
It demands an extreme physical toll on the human body.
I can't even imagine.
The biomechanics required to play a 47-centimeter viola are brutal. The player has to hyperextend their left arm, which places immense strain on the supraspinatus muscle in the shoulder.
Oh, wow.
And it causes severe flexion in the left wrist just to reach the strings.
Sounds like a fast track to an injury.
It is, but we have to remember, Amati didn't design this to be played with modern technique.
Right, because this was a tenor viola.
Exactly. In the 1500s, the music it played consisted of relatively slow, supportive harmony lines in a choir.
They were just holding long notes?
Yes, the player wasn't executing lightning-fast arpeggios or crazy solos.
Which makes sense for the 1500s.
Yeah.
And what makes the Ashmolean Amati so incredibly rare today, according to the sources, is that it is one of the only surviving large pattern violas that has not been cut down.
Right. Which introduces the most controversial practice in the entire history of luthery.
This blew my mind when I read it, because the sources detail another surviving Andrea Amati viola, the Stanley Solomon viola, dating from around 1580, and it's smaller. Its current body length is 43.3 centimeters. But the experts analyzing it noted that its full, incredibly open acoustic sound proves it was originally a massive tenor viola, likely over 45.7 centimeters long.
Exactly.
So someone physically took a saw to a priceless Amati masterpiece just to shrink it.
They systematically dismantled the instrument and amputated sections of the wood to reduce its overall dimensions.
I am struggling to understand the logic here. I mean, if you have an instrument built by the pioneer of Cremona, arguably one of the most perfectly balanced acoustic chambers ever designed, why would you actively destroy its geometry?
It seems crazy now.
Right, the golden ratio, the arching, the exact placement of the F holes.
Yeah.
All of that math is ruined the second you slice out a piece of the wood. How is this anything other than cultural vandalism?
It's a very fair question. But to understand it, we really have to look at how music evolved.
Okay, lay it on me.
By the time we reached the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the role of the viola had drastically changed.
It wasn't just choir backup anymore.
No. Composers like Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven were writing string quartets where the viola was no longer just playing slow, supportive tenor lines.
The music got harder.
Much harder. It became fast, highly complex, and technically demanding.
So the physical wingspan required to navigate an 18.5-inch tenor viola suddenly became a massive liability.
Exactly. The physical agony of trying to play a fast Mozart passage on a 47-centimeter instrument was simply too great for the human body to endure.
They physically couldn't do it.
Right. But these musicians, they knew that the Amati wood, the varnish, the fundamental resonance of these instruments was irreplaceable.
They loved the sound.
They wanted the Amati sound, but they needed it in a physically manageable package.
Wow.
So luthiers were commissioned to perform this radical surgery.
How do you even do that without just destroying the instrument? I mean, do you just saw an inch off the bottom?
Oh, no, it's a terrifyingly complex procedure.
I bet.
A luthier would carefully unglue the top and back plates from the ribs.
Okay, so they pop it open like a clamshell?
Yes. Then they would typically cut a section out of the upper and lower bouts, which are the rounded top and bottom sections of the body.
Just slice a strip out of the middle.
Essentially, yes. And then they would have to reshape the C bouts, which is the indented waist of the instrument.
So they are changing the whole outline.
Entirely. Then they would have to shorten the ribs, recalculate the placement of the internal bass bar, and somehow glue the whole thing back together under new tension.
Which fundamentally alters the interior volume of air that vibrates to produce the sound.
Absolutely.
It's a total miracle. They didn't just sound like dead, muffled boxes after that.
It really is a testament to the sheer quality of the original Cremonese wood and the arching that they survived this mutilation and still sounded brilliant.
Because lesser wood would just sound terrible.
It would just choke the sound. But many modern historians and appraisers, they absolutely view it as a tragedy.
Oh, I'm with them.
Yeah, in the sources, we see Ernest Doring, who is a highly respected 20th century figure who evaluated many Amati instruments, expressing intense disdain for this practice.
He hated it.
He specifically hated how 19th century luthiers would shorten the center of the instruments made by the brothers Amati, permanently distorting the visual and acoustic proportions.
And Antonio Maria Mucci, who researched Brescian instruments, documented his absolute horror at seeing early lira da braccios, which is an even older, multi-stringed ancestor to the violin family, being physically chopped up and transformed into violas.
Right. Mucci viewed it as the literal erasure of history.
It is.
You are permanently destroying the physical evidence of how 16th century music was played.
Just to put some hard, visceral numbers on this practice for you, the listener, the sources highlight the ex-William Primrose Amati.
This is a great example.
This was a viola made by the brothers Amati around 1600. The backstory is fascinating on its own. Primrose's father bought this viola for a mere 80 pounds.
Which is completely absurd in today's market where these instruments fetch millions.
Right, but sometime around 1800, it was subjected to this surgery. It was reduced to a body length of just 39.8 centimeters.
Yeah, tiny.
That's under 16 inches. They shaved nearly 3 full inches of wood off a masterpiece.
It really represents a profound tension, doesn't it?
What do you mean?
The tension between the instrument as a functional tool and the instrument as an untouchable piece of art.
Oh, I see.
To the working musicians in 1800, an Amati that was too physically painful to play was useless.
It was just a heavy piece of wood.
Right. By cutting it down, they kept it alive in the concert hall.
That's true.
They ensured it would continue to make music, even if they had to destroy its original architectural integrity to do it.
You know, you mentioned the brothers Amati, which brings us to a fascinating aspect of this whole story. The Amati dynasty.
Yes, the family business.
Because Andrea Amati's legacy didn't just end when he died, did it? It became a multi-generational family empire that entirely dominated the stringed instrument market in Cremona.
The lineage is quite remarkable, really, and it established the apprentice system that would define violin making for centuries.
So how did it work?
Well, you start with Andrea, then his sons, Antonius and Hieronymus, take over the shop. They are commonly known by their Latinized names, the brothers Amati.
Okay.
After them comes Andrea's grandson, Niccolo Amati, who lived from 1596 to 1684.
Wow, long life for back then.
Very much so. And Niccolo is widely considered the absolute pinnacle of the family, the greatest luthier of the entire clan, and notably the teacher of Antonio Stradivari.
The Stradivarius guy.
Exactly.
But the sources point out a really strange anomaly with Niccolo.
They do.
If he is the greatest luthier of the clan, why did he barely make any violas?
It speaks to the changing economics of music at the time.
Oh, money. It always comes back to money.
It always does. The sources indicate a severe industry-wide drop in demand for violas during the 17th century.
Why?
As the violin began to emerge as a dazzling solo instrument, composers focused heavily on violin sonatas and concertos.
So the violins were getting all the flashy solos.
Exactly, and the viola was relegated back to simple harmony filling.
So nobody wanted to pay top dollar for a harmony instrument.
Right, there was no market for highly expensive, master-crafted violas. Niccolo made very few, mostly large pattern ones, and the production of violas plummeted across all Italian luthiers during that specific period.
And then the fourth generation was represented by Girolamo II, right? Who made well-crafted instruments, but as the sources gently put it, they didn't quite capture the legendary magical status of his predecessors.
No, the golden age was kind of fading.
But what I find fascinating about diving into a family business that operated 400 years ago is how incredibly messy the record-keeping gets.
Oh, it is a nightmare for historians.
It's an absolute nightmare for modern appraisers.
Definitely, because when you have fathers, sons, and grandsons working in the exact same workshop, using the exact same tools, the exact same supply of alpine spruce and maple, and the exact same secret varnish recipe.
How do you tell who did what?
Exactly. Attribution becomes a game of microscopic forensic analysis.
Right, the sources highlight this incredible difficulty. Antonius and Hieronymus, the brothers, worked in their father Andrea's shop right up until his death around 1580.
Yes.
So if you were a modern appraiser examining an instrument dated 1579, you were essentially trying to decipher if the aging master built it entirely by himself, or if he carved the front plate, got tired, and his 20-year-old sons finished carving the back and applied the varnish.
It's so hard to know for sure. Appraisers have to look at the microscopic tool marks inside the instrument.
Like gouge marks.
Yeah, exactly. They look at dendrochronology, matching the tree rings in the wood to specific years.
Wow, like literal CSI for wood.
It is. They look at the exact sweeping curve of the heft holes, trying to discern if the knife was held by Andrea or Hieronymus. The Walter Trampler viola is the perfect case study of this diagnostic nightmare.
Let's talk about that one. Walter Trampler was a massively influential 20th century viola virtuoso.
Yes, very famous.
And his instrument is described in the sources as having unsurpassed beauty and exquisite, projecting tonal qualities.
A phenomenal instrument.
But the attribution of who actually built it is heavily debated by the top experts in the world.
It really is. The Wurlitzer firm in New York, which was one of the most prestigious authorities on this, they certified it as the work of the brothers Amati, dating it around 1620.
Okay, so a later build.
Right. However, other equally esteemed experts from New York and London have examined the exact same wood, the exact same arching, and feel entirely persuaded that it was actually started by Andrea Amati himself before his death in 1580, and the brothers simply completed it later.
It is a gorgeous instrument, too. It has this striking golden yellow varnish. And like almost every other instrument we've talked about so far, it was originally over 47 centimeters and was subjected to the butcher's block around 1800, cut down to 44.45 centimeters.
Another victim of the resize.
Yeah, but the detail I cannot get over is what is painted on the ribs of this thing.
Right,
it features a Latin inscription. Non edison homine sed virtus consideramus. And the coolest part is that the end of the last word is actually worn away from centuries of players' hands rubbing against it.
I love that detail. It shows it was actually used, not just stared at.
Exactly. And Crampler himself translated that motto as, "Judge a man by what he is, not by his age."
Which is almost too perfect, isn't it?
It really is. For an instrument whose very authorship is debated based on the overlapping ages of a father and his sons working in the same shop.
It's very poetic.
But if we are going to talk about wild decoration and absolute ego painted onto these instruments, we have to spend some time on the Henry IV Amati viola.
Oh, yes, we have to.
Because this thing is the definition of over the top.
It is a highly ornamented masterpiece dating from around 1590. It was commissioned by Henry IV of France, who is also known historically as Henry of Navarre. And it holds an incredible historical weight because it is one of only 2 instruments from a commission of at least 5 that actually managed to survive the destructive fury of the French Revolution.
And the description of this viola in the sources, it reads like a royal fever dream.
It is intense.
It's a robust, deep red-brown color. Covering almost the entire one-piece maple back is an elaborate painting of Henry V's armorial bearing.
This is massive.
And these bearings are literally being held up on each side by painted angels.
Angels, yes.
At each end of the back, there is a giant gold letter H with the crown of France resting on top of it.
Subtle.
Very subtle. There are laurel leaves scattered everywhere. There are 6 geometrically spaced flambeaux, which are little flaming torches.
Wow.
And painted on the ribs, progressing from left to right, is yet another Latin motto, DVO Protegi, TVNVS, which translates to God preserve my tone.
It is a profound, almost overwhelming statement of political power and royal ego, permanently rendered in wood, paint, and varnish.
Okay, but I have to ask a question about the physics of this, because it seems entirely counterintuitive to how instruments actually work.
How so?
Does painting a literal angel, 6 flaming torches, and a massive gold crown on the back of a viola actually make it a better musical instrument?
That is the big question.
I mean, when a string vibrates, the bridge transfers that energy into the wooden plates, causing them to flex and vibrate at microscopic levels. That vibration moves the air and creates sound.
Exactly. That's the acoustic engine.
Right. So if you slather the back of the instrument with heavy pigment and gold leaf, doesn't that mass dampen the vibration? Doesn't the royal ego literally get in the way of the acoustics?
That is a phenomenal question, and it is a point of massive debate among modern purists.
It just seems like a bad idea.
Well, the acoustic physics of a stringed instrument rely on a very delicate balance of mass and stiffness. The maple backplate acts as a reflector for the sound waves bouncing around inside the chamber. Adding layers of paint and gold leaf absolutely increases the mass of the plate. And, theoretically, increased mass with no increase in stiffness lowers the resonant frequency and can dampen the higher overtones.
Making the instrument sound sluggish or muted.
Exactly.
Right. It feels like taking an Olympic sprinter and making them wear a heavy coat. Just why?
Well, the source text actually addresses this directly by citing Kenneth Warren Sr.
Who was he?
He was the founder of a prestigious school of violin making in Chicago and a huge authority on classical instruments.
Oh.
And he gave a lecture specifically analyzing this exact Henry V viola.
And what did he say?
His conclusion was unequivocal. The ornamentation does absolutely nothing to add to the value or the quality of the instrument as a musical tool.
So the paint doesn't make it sound better.
Precisely. Warren made it abundantly clear that it is the viola's quality, per se, the underlying masterful Cremona craftsmanship, the perfect graduation of the wood thicknesses, the exact arching of the plates that makes it an exceptional acoustic engine.
So it sounds good despite the paint, not because of it.
Right. Inscriptions, paintings, and inlay devices are historical curiosities. They are beautiful to look at, and they tell us about the immense ego of the patron, obviously.
Obviously.
But they do not make the wood vibrate any more efficiently. In fact, if applied too thickly, they might hinder it, though in the case of the Henry IV viola, the author notes the instrument miraculously still possesses exceptional tonal qualities.
It's amazing. And the author of our source material actually got to physically measure and play the Henry IV viola, which is now owned by a retired U.S. Navy captain named Edgar K. Thompson.
Yes.
And surprise, surprise, it was also chopped down.
Of course it was.
Originally probably over 45.7 centimeters, now sitting at 42.2 centimeters. It suffered the exact same 1800 surgery as all the others.
It really was an epidemic of resizing. But, if we step back for a moment, the Amatis presents a very specific aesthetic and a very specific business model.
How would you describe it?
They are operating in Cremona. They are securing massive multi-instrument royal commissions from the French court, and they are producing these elegant, highly finished, uniform art pieces that double as royal propaganda.
Right. It is a world of pristine showrooms and endless royal wealth.
Exactly.
But the sources revealed that while the Amatis were dominating Cremona with their sleek, polished aesthetic, there was a completely different vibe, like a completely different acoustic philosophy brewing just 30 miles to the north.
Yes, a totally different world in the city of Brescia.
Brescia is fascinating to me. The sources point out that Brescia had been a massive center for instrument building, famous for making fine lutes and rebecks, as far back as 1450.
Long before Amati even started his workshop.
Right, and their absolute champion, their pioneer of the violin family, was a man named Gasparo Bertolotti, though history remembers him as Gasparo da Salò.
Named after the small village on Lake Garda where he was born. Gasparo da Salò is a brilliant, rugged contrast to the Amati family.
In what way?
Well, he opened his shop in Brescia around 1560. While historians debate whether he was the very first Brescian to make violin pattern instruments, because there were older makers like Veneto Montechiaro, and Girolamo Verci Gasparo is the one whose violas, violins, cellos, and basses survived the centuries and achieved legendary acoustic status.
And the sources give us this incredible, deeply relatable window into Gasparo's life.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
Right, we aren't just looking at the wood he carved. We are literally looking at his tax returns from the year 1588.
Yes. Antonio Maria Mucci, who did painstaking granular research on Gasparo in 1940, he uncovered these civic records.
And what do they tell us?
They paint a picture of a brilliant luthier dealing with severe, stress-inducing economic volatility.
Like relatable gig economy stress.
Very relatable.
Because in his 1588 tax return, Gasparo lists a debt of 60 lira that he owes to a monk, Cuddy Gabriel.
Right.
And he actually writes down his excuse for why he had to borrow the money to pay his taxes. He tells the tax collector, quote, "Because my art is not going as well in France as usual."
Which is a tragic, almost comical understatement of the geopolitical nightmare happening in France at that exact time.
Wait, why? What was actually happening in France?
Well, Gasparo's highly lucrative export business to France plummeted because France was tearing itself apart in a disastrous civil conflict known as the War of the Three Henrys.
Three Henrys.
Yes. You had King Henry III, Henry of Navarre, and Henry of Guise fighting a massive, bloody war for control of the country.
Wow, that sounds chaotic.
It was. It was fueled by deep religious divides between Catholics and Huguenots. Trade routes were totally disrupted, inflation skyrocketed, and the market for luxury Italian imports completely collapsed.
That is the ultimate excuse for not paying your taxes.
Right.
Sorry, the French monarchy is imploding in a violent civil war, so my cash flow is a little tight right now.
Can you give me an extension?
But it gets even better, because in another item on that exact same 1588 tax return, Gasparo has to explain why he is keeping a deposit of 102 lire.
Oh, the deposit story.
Yes. Apparently, a client from Venice named M. Antonio gave him a deposit to construct a pair of violins on behalf of his father-in-law, M. Simon.
Okay.
But before Gasparo could finish building them, M. Simon unexpectedly died.
Just drop dead.
Right. So Gasparo just kept the deposit, didn't deliver the violins, and the son-in-law was aggressively demanding the money back. And he writes this all down for the taxman.
It's a remarkable, deeply human, historical artifact.
It really is.
Because it lays bare his entire business model. The Amatis in Cremona were relying on massive, stable royal commissions of 38 instruments at a time, backed by the treasury of France.
Huge money.
Exactly. Gasparo da Salò, on the other hand, was operating in a 16th century gig economy.
Hustling for work.
He was piecing his livelihood together through special individual contracts from private buyers. A pair of violins for a guy in Venice here, a custom viola for a local church there.
We are sitting here analyzing a 16th century genius's tax excuses. It's so fun.
It's amazing.
But it makes me wonder, does this gig economy approach, this reliance on one-off private commissions, does that explain why Gasparo's instruments are so wildly varied in size compared to the Amatis?
That is precisely the conclusion historians and appraisers draw.
Really?
Yes, Because Gasparo made instruments for special individual orders rather than outfitting an entire royal orchestra, his violas rarely have the same dimensions.
Because everyone is different.
Right. A wealthy patron in Venice might order a smaller viola because he literally had shorter arms.
Oh, shorter fingers?
Exactly. While a church musician in Brescia might order a massive instrument because they needed to project over a large choir in a big echoey church. There was no absolute standard pitch at the time and no standardization of size.
And the variety documented in the sources is staggering. They mention the Kievan viola, built by Gasparo, which has a tiny body length of 39.53 centimeters.
Pretty small.
But then you have the Borsovsky viola, also built by Gasparo, which is a massive 46 centimeters.
Yeah.
He was just fluidly adapting his templates to build whatever the client needed on that specific day.
He was very flexible. But there is another, perhaps more vital reason for this constant variation in size, shape, and arching.
What's that?
Gasparo da Salò had an insatiable, almost obsessive desire to experiment with the physics of sound.
Like a mad scientist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was constantly tweaking the dimensions, adjusting the thicknesses of the wood, trying to produce a bigger, richer, more resonant acoustic chamber. He wasn't interested in making pristine, visually perfect art to sit in a glass case.
He didn't care about the angels and the crowns.
No. He was entirely focused on building acoustic engines.
So let's look at the physical anatomy of those acoustic engines. Because the source is, quote, Walter Hamma.
Yes, the appraiser.
Right, an internationally famous appraiser.
Yeah.
Who gives a very blunt, kind of unromantic evaluation of Gasparo's physical craftsmanship.
Very blunt. Hamma describes Gasparo's work as, quote, rather robust and flatly constructed.
What does that mean in practical terms?
Well, to break that down for you, where Amati would carve a very high, elegant, sweeping arch into the top plate of the viola, Gasparo carved a much flatter lower arch.
Why does that matter?
The flatter the arch, the more massive and powerful the sound projection tends to be, though it sacrifices some of the sweet, bell-like clarity of a high arch.
Hamma also notes that Gasparo's outlines are raw and not perfectly symmetrical. Like, if you measure the left side and the right side, they're perfectly matched.
They are definitely asymmetrical. Hamma points out several other fascinating acoustic choices, too.
Like what?
Gasparo's F-holes, the curved sound holes cut into the front of the instrument that allow the air inside the chamber to resonate with the outside air.
Right, known in physics as Helmholtz resonance.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
His F-holes are wide open and nearly vertical. This allows for a massive movement of air, creating a very dark, booming lower register.
Okay.
Furthermore, the tables of spruce wood he used for the top plate are often wide-grained.
Wait, how does the grain of the wood affect the sound? I never understood that.
It's crucial. The grain refers to the growth rings of the tree. Tightly spaced rings mean the tree grew slowly, resulting in very dense, stiff wood.
Okay, that makes sense.
Wide-grained wood, which Gasparo favored, means the tree grew faster. It's slightly less dense, which allows the top plate of the viola to flex more easily under the immense tension of the strings.
And that changes the tone.
It produces a very deep, rich, and mellow vibration.
That is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about a specific instrument that perfectly encapsulates Gasparo's obsession with acoustics over visual perfection. The Louis Bailly da Salò viola.
Oh, this is a legendary instrument.
Yeah.
Louis Bailly was a famed quartet violist who purchased this instrument in 1908.
Go on.
It's a large, powerful instrument that, like the Amatis, was cut down by later generations to a more playable 43.8 centimeters.
Because of course it was.
Of course. And it features all of Gasparo's hallmarks. That wide-open F-hole design, the flat arching, and single purfling.
Purfling is the protective inlay around the edge of the instrument that prevents the wood from cracking.
Right, that's right.
But the detail in the sources that absolutely floored me is what is on the back of this masterpiece. Yes. Right in the middle of the maple backplate, on the right side of the middle bout, which is the indented waist of the viola, there is a literal knot in the wood. A knot.
Yeah, a visible knot in the grain.
For context for the listener, almost any fine luthier in Cremona would discard a piece of maple with a knot as aesthetically flawed.
They would throw it in the fire.
Exactly. It disrupts the beautiful tiger-striped flaming of the wood. They would consider it garbage. They wanted a perfectly clear, flawless canvas for a royal masterpiece.
But Gasparo da Salò looks at this piece of wood, sees the knot, and uses it anyway.
Why? I mean, is he just trying to save money on materials because of his tax debts?
Well, while he was definitely frugal, the likely reason is far more acoustic.
Okay.
Gasparo possessed an intuitive genius for understanding how a specific piece of timber would vibrate. A knot represents a hyperdense, localized area of extreme stiffness within the wood.
So it changes how the plate flexes.
Exactly. Gasparo likely tapped that piece of maple, listened to its resonant frequency, and knew that the specific acoustic impedance created by that knot would act as a natural acoustic filter, enhancing the exact frequencies he wanted.
That is unbelievable.
He knew it would sound flawless, and he simply did not care if it looked a bit messy or visually flawed to the eye. For Gasparo, the sound was paramount.
And the history etched into this instrument completely lacks the regal polish of the Amati.
Completely.
I mean, instead of an angel and a crown carefully painted in gold leaf by a master artist, someone literally took a sharp tool and scratched their name right into the back of the wood. Kirchmeier Ritter, 1757.
They essentially keyed their name into a 16th century masterpiece, like a teenager carving their initials into a park bench.
It is so incredibly raw and unpretentious.
But that acoustic obsession, that willingness to use knotted wood and sacrifice visual symmetry for tone, it paid off massively, didn't it?
Immensely. While they may look unrefined and ruddied compared to the pristine Cremonese work, Gasparo's violas are prized globally for their incredibly mellow, dark, and deeply resonant tone.
They just sound different.
Yeah. This is why, throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, some of the greatest quartet virtuosos in history men, like Ottokar Novacek, Louis Bailey, Vadim Borisovsky, and Irving Ilmer. They aggressively sought out Gasparo's instruments over the Cremonese alternatives.
They didn't want the polite royal sound.
No.
They wanted the dark Brescian horsepower.
Exactly. Brescian horsepower. I love that. And because of that incredible sound quality and the massive demand from top-tier performers, the market value of these rugged, asymmetrical Brescian violas rapidly pushed to absolute parity with the pristine, mathematically perfect Cremonese masters.
It is a total clash of philosophies.
It really is. Amati is the royal court, backed by the treasury of France, building sleek, symmetrical art pieces that project geopolitical power.
And Gasparo is the mad scientist in his Brescian workshop, battling tax debts, dodging the economic fallout of civil wars, and experimenting with knotted wood to build the ultimate acoustic engine.
And both of these wildly divergent approaches yielded instruments that have survived for over 4 centuries and are still considered the absolute, undisputed pinnacle of human craftsmanship.
It's just a fantastic story all around.
It is. So as we wrap this up, what does all of this mean for you, the listener, today?
Good question.
The sources we dug into today totally reframe how we should look at the classical music world. I mean, we go to a symphony, we see the musicians in their crisp tuxedos, we see these shiny, perfect wooden instruments reflecting the stage lights, and we are conditioned to think of them as untouchable, divine artifacts.
They look so perfect.
Right. But the reality is that they were born out of messy, chaotic human ambition. They were born out of a region's vanity and political maneuvering.
And they survived insanely angry mobs and the destruction of a revolution.
They were born out of literal tax evasion, civil war, and a mad scientist's acoustic experimentation with flawed, knotted wood.
And perhaps most shockingly, they survived the literal chopping up and resizing of masterpieces just to make them easier for musicians to hold.
Right, the mutilation. This history strips away the polished mythology of classical music and leaves us with something much more human, much more resilient, and arguably much more impressive.
I think so too. But this history of mutilation, it raises an important question, something for you to deeply consider after this deep dive ends.
What's that?
Well, we look back in absolute horror at 18th century musicians taking a saw to a priceless, perfectly balanced Amati viola just to make it fit their physical comfort and modern musical demands.
We call it cultural vandalism. We call it a tragedy. Right? It feels like taking a sledgehammer to a Michelangelo statue because you need it to fit in your living room.
Exactly. But it forces us to turn that lens on ourselves.
How so?
What modern technology, what historical architecture, or what piece of art are we currently resizing or altering for our own convenience today?
Oh, wow.
Are we compressing masterfully engineered audio files so they stream faster on our phones, destroying the acoustic depth?
Probably.
Are we chopping up brilliantly paced films into 10-second clips for social media? What are we casually modifying right now because it fits our modern, fast-paced lifestyle due to completely unaware that future generations will look back at us as the vandals who destroyed the original integrity of the art?
Wow. That is a heavy thought. Are we taking a saw to something right now and simply calling it progress?
It's worth thinking about.
It definitely makes you realize the next time you look at a 400-year-old object, Whether it is sitting quietly behind museum glass or singing under the bow on a concert stage, you aren't just looking at a static piece of history.
You are looking at a survivor.
You are looking at the literal scars of human progress.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope this summary and analysis have been of great help to you. Please remember that this is only a summary and can never replace the book itself. Therefore, we invite you to truly immerse yourself in the work by reading the original text. If this content was useful to you, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell. Remember, you can share this video with your friends to help our community continue to grow. Warmest regards, and remember, there is always time to learn and explore the world of classical music. A Viola studio production.